This humble potato is the #1 most wasted food in the UK. 4.4 million potatoes go to waste every single day. They're cheap to buy, widely available all year round, and there are, believe it or not, hundreds and hundreds of varieties. And it's an absolute staple in British cuisine, brought over by the Yanks in the 1500s. You're welcome. Fish and chips, pie and mash, roasted potatoes, and crisps. Everyone has their favorite way of eating this staple food. But that's the deal with staple foods. We all have them, and because they're so cheap to replace, and we buy them regularly, we don't tend to value the few that get left at the bottom of a fridge drawer, and the vicious cycle of waste begins. I met with Helen and Richard from WRAP, the Waste and Resources Action Program, to try and get my head around why people don't connect to the problem of food waste.
We asked people, we said, do you waste food? 9 out of 10 people of the whole country said, nah, we don't waste food. And yet we'd measured 8.3 million tons worth of food waste in the bin. And clearly we have a problem. But also it's having a massive environmental impact. It's 6 times aviation emissions. We all think traveling by air is a big environmental problem. Throwing food waste away, that's a massive problem by comparison. And so, and just to bring it alive one more time, is you need the area the size of China to grow the food that we throw away every year.
Food waste. Tell me about it. What's happening in the UK?
In the UK, we waste 7.1 million tonnes of food every single year. 5 million tonnes of that is edible. It's perfectly good food that could have been eaten. And 70% of food waste across the chain in the UK is coming from our homes. So it's coming from consumers, citizens, people, families, whatever you want to call us, it's coming from us. We're the people that are generating that waste.
So your potato gets a bit old, unused, a bit squishy, and starts to sprout like this little guy right here. We'll get back to that in just a bit, but this is perfectly edible, trust me. When we send potatoes, or food for that matter, to a landfill, it takes a long time to decompose. And in that time, it releases a greenhouse gas called methane. And methane is 25 to 30 times more potent than carbon dioxide, which contributes to climate change. If food waste was a country, it would be the 3rd largest greenhouse gas emitter behind the United States and China. Food waste isn't just happening in the household, it's happening all over the supply chain. In the UK, 650 million pounds worth of food is wasted before it leaves the farmer's gate. Ruby's in the Rubble is a food company that collects surplus fruit and vegetables and turns them into condiments like ketchups and relishes.
It's really criminal that we are growing and producing and wasting food, because actually I think people don't quite think about food as a driver of climate change in the same way that they do with transport and planes and cars, but actually the food industry is far bigger than the transport industry when it comes to being one of the main causes of climate change. It's created this kind of disconnect between consumers and where their food comes from, so we no longer value or treasure how that food made its way to us and how much energy and care went into getting it there.
We've got that black swan moved in, and he likes apples.
Pete is one of the farms we've been working with the longest. He was one of the first farms we went out to see and realised quite how big the scale of the problem was.
Pete Thompson's family have run a farm for 3 generations. It smells like apples.
It smells like apples, doesn't it? They need to go. They're getting a little bit ripe, shall we say. This is exactly where rubies would be coming from. So, and this is all fruit that is grade 2. So every apple here would be either going into our juice, going into our distillery to turn into our gin. Some of it will go off to rubies as well for the chutneys.
We're taking something that maybe only has a few days life on it before it has to get thrown away and will perish, and turning it into something that could last up to 3 years or more. you're extending the life cycle and therefore the potential value from a few days to a few years.
It's not a new idea, it's an old idea. You've got waste, you use it, you add value to it, you make something delicious out of it as well. We can't leave the apples on the tree.
Right.
If you leave the apples on the tree, you generate disease. So we have to take the apples off the tree. So it costs me, say, between 10 to 15 pence a kilo to pick them, whether we use them or not.
It's us as the consumers who pay for this waste, because somehow you've got to pay for the fact that all this produce is getting produced with nowhere to go. So ultimately, if we could just use it, then it will be better for everyone, because we're not paying for food that doesn't get eaten.
Yeah, it is depressing when you finish harvesting and you see there's a lot left behind that could be sold and it's got real value to it, then it is depressing. We know as farmers, when we work with the weather, the nature, we're going to get flushes. It warms up, the sun comes out, everything grows that much faster. So having people like Oddbox who then can take that flush, or we give to food banks as well, and people like FareShare, but having a way of distributing that is brilliant, because it takes those flushes which you otherwise would just plough in.
Supermarkets up and down the country now sell wonky veg as an option in the fight against food waste. Oddbox is a company which offers a weekly subscription service for a mixed box of fruit and vegetables with the produce coming from farms where it would have otherwise been wasted.
So we started Oddbox because there was an inefficient supply chain and we could create value from that inefficient supply chain. So what we do is we buy misshapen as well as surplus produce. We work directly with over 70 growers across the country. But more importantly, we thought we could use Oddbox as a channel, as a medium to educate customers about where the food was coming from and connect them back to the food supply chain, connect them back to seasonality, eating with seasons, informing them and educating them about what happens when there's warm winters or wet summers. How does it affect availability of food as well? Consumers shop with their eyes, and therefore they pick the perfect looking produce if it's priced the same, and therefore, but the public perception in general is changing now. People are opening their eyes to what's happening behind the scenes when people don't choose perfect looking veg. Just like people, all fruit and veg come in all shapes, sizes and colors. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with being imperfect. And I think we need to embrace imperfection in its way, because that's how nature goes. Nature doesn't grow to our specifications.
Yeah, we have to provide a very uniform sized apple. Anything too big is waste, anything too small is waste. Yet you look at the population, if you put everyone next to each other, we're all different sizes.
Right.
Yet we have to produce this uniform single variety.
Right. The humble potato, the humble spud. Why? What's wrong with this?
Nothing's wrong with it in terms of size or shape. It's purely because it's surplus to requirements, so there are demand-supply fluctuations in the market.
So chuck it away.
Exactly. That's about 14% of the potatoes that grow never even leave the farm gates.
14%?
Absolutely.
14% of potatoes that we grow here in the UK don't leave the farm.
Correct. Exactly.
Wow. Hopefully, in the future, we'll see more wonky veg box initiatives pop up. They show us that while it's difficult to fight the problem as consumers because there's waste practically built into the system, they do connect us to the root of the problem and hopefully empower us to think differently about the value of basic fruits and vegetables. Back to sprouting. Underneath this sprout is called the eye of the potato. Basically, what's trying to happen at this point is the potato's trying to grow a whole new one. So that's pretty cool. So just remove the sprout and your potato will be perfectly fine to eat. Keep your potato in a well-ventilated, dry, dark, and cool area like your cupboard. And keep them out of plastic, out of light, and out of your fridge. If I have a few potatoes left over, I like to chuck them in a curry. I'm back in the kitchen to show you my delicious creamy potato and chickpea curry with crispy potato skins. Start by chopping 1 onion, 1 garlic clove, and a thumb-sized piece of ginger. Add this to a saucepan with an oil of your choice and saute until soft and translucent. Meanwhile, wash and peel about 3 to 4 large potatoes. Place your potato peelings on a baking tray and set to bake for 10 minutes in a preheated oven at 180 degrees Celsius until they crisp up. Once your garlic and ginger has had a few minutes to cook, add your spices. Today, I'm using 1 tablespoon of garam masala, 1 teaspoon of each of coriander seeds, cumin seeds, and fennel seeds, 1 teaspoon of turmeric powder, and 1 tablespoon of tomato paste. Give this a good stir and coat everything evenly for a few minutes. Then add in 2 roughly chopped carrots, 1 tin of chickpeas, and your peeled potatoes. Add about 750 milliliters of water, stir, cover, and leave to cook on a low-medium heat for 20 to 30 minutes until your potatoes are cooked through. And to finish, for extra creaminess, add 100 milliliters of coconut milk for the last 2 minutes of cooking. Serve over your favorite cooked rice with fresh chopped coriander and those crispy potato skins for a nice garnish. Enjoy. You can swap out the potatoes for other root vegetables, butternut squash, parsnips, swede, or even aubergine. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Regeneration Food. I hope you can take away some of these tips to create less waste in your kitchen today. In the next episode, we're going to be looking at bread.
When a sandwich manufacturer makes those sandwiches, they throw the end slices away, which is totally crazy.
Actually doing it. The carbon emissions that comes from the 10.2 million tonnes of food that we throw away is the equivalent of every third motor car that is on our road.
In the meantime, I hope you can think twice about throwing away these little guys.